All right, thanks for tuning into this workshop entitled Beyond Awareness. As many of you know, autism is a disorder that seems to rise around the world, and there's a lot of information out there designed to raise awareness and acceptance of this population. In fact, the month of April has been designated as National Autism Awareness Month. And typically during the months of March and April, I'm scheduled as a speaker at various conferences. However, several of you have asked if I would create a short video that is reflective of the information that I provide at those conferences. So that's what I'm going to do today. Well, sort of. And the reason why I say sort of is that I am fully aware that most of you would not sit for a 2-hour-long science-filled lecture full of esoteric jargon. So I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to do is take about 45 minutes and combine some of the key points that I cover during my lectures, along with some of the naturopathic solutions that I have found to be beneficial. Now, before I get into the information, I need to take care of some legal stuff, right? Disclaimers. Most importantly, let's be very clear that the information contained in this video is in no way meant to imply that these suggestions or these protocols are ever meant to treat, cure, or mitigate disease. In addition, they are not meant as a substitution for good medical care. Because I understand that the content in this video is quite compelling, I tend to be very passionate over the results that I witness. So I may feel the need to repeat this disclaimer throughout the video, just so that there's no misunderstanding. Now, with that said, I am truly super excited to share with you the information in this video, and I hope you find the information useful. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Marco Rodriguez. My beautiful wife, Diane, and I are in private practice in El Paso, Texas. Our clinic offers occupational therapy, speech therapy, neurofeedback, and brain map studies. We specialize in seeing persons on the autism spectrum, ADD, ADHD, and other neurologic atypicalities. And we've been blessed to build one of the largest clinics of its kind in the country. But what's interesting is that I wasn't always in private practice. In fact, for most of my career, I worked in inpatient rehab at one of the local hospitals. And to be perfectly honest, I loved my job. I had no intentions of ever going into private practice. But how many of you know that your plans and what life actually hands you doesn't always match up? And for us, it came in the form of this little guy right here. This is my son Patrick, and during his first few years of life, we had no indication whatsoever that he would develop all of the neurologic, behavioral, and emotional challenges that we were about to face. And unlike like most of you, we looked at all the traditional interventions available in our area. We also tried every medication that was recommended. Unfortunately, Patrick's system was so sensitive that it seemed like if there was a side effect, Patrick got it. And at one point, the cocktail of medication even went so far as to deactivate his growth hormone. And he had to be administered human growth hormone shots, genotropin shots, every single night. Not fun for him, not fun for me. So we were desperate to find a solution. And every time we went back to the doctor's office, we got the same old thing. Well, Mr. Rodriguez, let's increase the dose, let's decrease the dose, or let's see how that works, or let's combine these two medications and maybe that'll do better. Can you relate with that? Let's try this, let's try that, let's up the dose, let's decrease the dose, let's combine. And it seemed like they really didn't know. They were simply guessing with my son's life. So I began to do my own research, and what I discovered was that none of the medications that are being given to Patrick were addressing some of the core biomarkers associated with persons diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And the same could be said for children that have ADHD, ADD, and have other neurologic atypicalities. These issues include brainwave dysregulation, low levels of glutathione, high levels of reactive oxygen species, mitochondrial dysfunction, brain inflammation, and a poor gut biome. And none of these medications were designed to address those core issues. So, over the next few minutes, I'm going to be covering the biomarkers associated with this population and some of the recommendations based on science that I have found have a positive impact. And we'll start with brainwave dysregulation. The brain is made up of 100 billion interconnected neurons, also known as brain cells, and those neurons are in constant communication with each other. They never stop, and that communication is both chemical as well as electrical. Now, electrically, we can measure it with an EEG. And of course, now with QEEG technology, we're able to take a three-dimensional image of the electrical activity of the brain, and we now know that there are certain common neurologic patterns associated with persons with autism. Now, there are some limitations. For example, brain map clinics are rare and most people don't have access to them. In addition, most insurances will not pay for them, so it's usually an out-of-pocket expense. Now, at our clinic, if you are a Medicaid patient, we will do the brain mapping at no additional charge, as long as the person qualifies for OT or speech. And of course, most clinics are not going to do that. So if you live in the El Paso, Texas area, great. But if you don't worry.
There's still plenty of things that you can do to optimize cellular health and fortify the body against those common biomarkers. So we'll start with the first two, low levels of glutathione and high levels of reactive oxygen species, also known as oxidative stress. Now, the first thing you need to know is that glutathione is the most important molecule that most people have never heard of. According to some molecular biologists, besides water, it is the most abundant single molecule in your body. So think about this. If this is true, it must be doing something really important in your body. And one of the key functions that it has in your body includes determining the redox status, which is analogous to pH, your body temperature. And what I mean by that is that we know our bodies like to regulate pH and body temperatures within a very tight range. So if you fall below a few degrees or above or below your optimal body temperature, it has severe consequences to your health. The same is true of the redox status. And what the redox status is determining is whether the cell is reducing or making this nasty little thing called oxidative stress. And in order for your cells to function optimally, you must stay in this tight range to make sure that all of this biochemistry is happening inside of your cells. And glutathione is essential for the detoxification process. So just like antibodies working in our system to boost our immunity, glutathione attaches itself to various toxins and facilitates the removal from your body. And what's interesting about glutathione is that it is a protein that is made by and inside of your body. So what does that have to do with persons with autism? Well, it's a well-known fact that persons with autism generally have very low levels of glutathione and high levels of oxidative stress. In fact, in PubMed.gov, which is our National Library of Medicine, there's over 200 studies demonstrating the link between low levels of glutathione and the severity of autism. And those studies equate to, most of them equate to low levels of glutathione and high levels of oxidative stress. So let's talk about oxidative stress and what that is. The first thing you need to know about oxidative stress is that we all have it. In fact, in PubMed.gov, there's over 200,000 studies on that subject. Now, please note, studies aren't cheap. In fact, they cost tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars each. So what we're talking about here is hundreds of billions of dollars being spent to study this nasty little thing called oxidative stress. And yet, the average person and even the average physician doesn't know much about it. And we know that oxidative stress has been linked to over 200 different diseases, things like cancer, diabetes, Parkinson's, lupus, fibromyalgia, and the list goes on. And in that list is included ADHD as well as autism. In fact, the effects of oxidative stress on persons with autism is well documented in medical journals throughout the world. So let me ask you, why are they spending so much money studying the effects of oxidative stress on persons with autism unless there was something to this? A quick search in PubMed.gov demonstrates that there's over 525 studies, peer-reviewed studies, on the subject of autism and how it's affected by oxidative stress. So again, billions of dollars being spent to study this. There must be something to it. So what exactly is oxidative stress? Well, if you take an apple and you let the apple sit out for a while, what happens to the apple? Right, it begins to decay, it oxidizes. And it's the same process that happens if you take a piece of iron and you let it get exposed to the environment over the course of time. That piece of iron will rust, it oxidizes, and it's the same process that's occurring inside of your cells. So what do I believe to be the best option to boost your glutathione and reduce your oxidative stress levels? So we'll start with glutathione. Now there are a handful of foods that naturally contain glutathione, including asparagus, avocados, cabbage, and so on. But one of my concerns is the quality of the food that we have nowadays, and a variety of other factors that can affect the levels of this vital nutrient, including storage or cooking times. You also have to consider that much of the glutathione in these foods may be destroyed by the stomach acids during the digestion process. And of course, your final challenge would be if you have what we affectionately call that picky eater, right? For those of you who have one, you understand exactly what I'm saying. Good luck trying to get them to eat some of these foods. So there are dietary supplements out there that can boost glutathione. Now, if you're anything like me, you might be wondering if supplements or dietary compounds have any scientific backing, and the answer is yes, they do. In fact, if you do a search in PubMed.gov, you'll find over 3,000 studies on the subject. So there are dietary supplements out there that can boost glutathione. Now, it's always important to do your due diligence when choosing the right brand. Since dietary supplements are not within FDA jurisdiction in terms of being certified by them, you'll want to find one that has other certifications. For example, the NSF, which is the National Science Foundation. Now, the NSF is an independent agency of the United States government that supports fundamental research and education in all non-medical fields of science and engineering. Its medical counterpart is the National Institute of Health. So if you can find a product that is certified by the NSF, you know you have an excellent product. Another certification that I would look for is the BSCG, which is Banned Substance Control Group. That means it's certified drug-free. Now, the BSCG applies the Olympic standard of drug testing to quality control of dietary supplements and natural products. Either of these certifications would be good, and if you can find one that is certified by both, that would be a very special product. In addition to these two certifications, other important factors include whether that product itself has been studied by independent parties. Most importantly, does the actual product have peer-reviewed studies in PubMed.gov? And be careful, because I have found that some products say that they have studies, but the studies are on the ingredients, not necessarily on the finished product. Understand, PubMed.gov is the gold standard for research. It's where your doctor and other health professionals like myself go to find our research, okay? We don't go to Google. You can find anything there. Go where your doctor goes, the same place that I go. PubMed.gov, our National Library of Medicine. If it's not in PubMed, I would be very skeptical about its claims. Another consideration that you want to explore is what the studies actually say about that particular product. For example, how much is glutathione boosted based on the study, right? Is it 10%, 100%, more than 100%? That would be good. Remember, not all products are created equal. And you also want to be careful that you're purchasing your product from a reputable company with an established record. And I would be very leery about buying products on Amazon. I have found that there's a lot of counterfeit products there. All right, I hope that makes sense. Just be smart, okay? Be proactive in your decision. By the way, it goes without saying that you should apply that same level of diligence with all of your products. All right, I hope that makes sense. So we know that glutathione can lower that nasty little thing called oxidative stress, right? So what else can you do to reduce oxidative stress? To answer that question, we go back to our foundation for health, which is a good diet. Foods that are known to be rich in antioxidants, and as much as possible, I encourage you to stick to a healthy diet. But again, I realize that this is easier said than done, especially with those picky eaters. Now, if your child is a good eater, my gosh, you should stand up right now and do the happy dance, because the rest of us, oh my gosh, we are so envious of you. But whether your child is a picky eater or a good eater, there's a few things to keep in mind when it comes to diet. And one of them has to do with the quality of the food that we consume, which may impact the amounts of the various foods that you have to consume in order to get sufficient amounts of the antioxidants into your cells. Please keep in mind that the overall quality of our food has significantly been compromised over the past 50 years. In fact, in this article cites a 2004 landmark study, researchers at the University of Texas at Austin, the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. It was published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition. They compared nutritional data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture from both 1950 and 1999 for 43 different vegetables and fruits. And they found reliable declines, quote unquote, reliable declines in the amount of protein, calcium, phosphorus, riboflavin, iron, vitamin B2, and vitamin C. What about organic diets, right? How do they compare? Well, the Organic Consumers Association cites several studies with similar findings. For example, Kushi Institute's analysis of nutrients data from 1975 to 1997 found that the average calcium levels in 12 fresh vegetables dropped 27%. Iron levels dropped 37%. Vitamin A dropped 21%, and vitamin C levels dropped 30%. A similar study of British nutrient data from 1930 to 1980, which was published in the British Food Journal, found that in 20 vegetables, the average calcium content declined 19%, iron 22%, and potassium 14%. Another study concluded that you'd have to eat 8 oranges today to derive the same amount of vitamin A as our grandparents did back with 1 orange. So while I do believe in having a healthy diet, it just seems to me that we need to do a little more to get the same level of nutrients into our bodies. So I suppose that may be why nutritional supplements have grown in popularity. Who knows? But what concerns me more is that while our food is significantly depleted of its nutrients, compared to 50 years ago, of course, the amount of environmental toxins that we're exposed to has grown exponentially. Many articles point to how we are now exposed to over 100,000 invisible toxins or chemicals every day in the food you eat, the air you breathe, personal care, makeup products, cleaning products, air fresheners. I mean, we're pumping air fresheners almost literally up our nose. Think about this. The human species has existed for eons, and the human species lived in a relatively clean earth. However, our environment has radically changed in the past 100 years. So I don't believe our bodies have had time to adapt to that. So what can you do? One way is to reduce the amount of exposure to those toxins, and there's some really good apps available that can help you. One of my favorites is the Think Dirty app. It's a funny name, but it's a very powerful tool. And for the sake of time, I won't go into the details, but I encourage you to research them and apply them to your life, however you need to. But what about supplementation, supplementing with antioxidants? Well, that's not a bad idea. However, I'm going to forewarn you that there are thousands of them. So remember the suggestions that I made earlier having to do with certification process, the research, making sure you find a reputable company, and all of that. Now, I would be doing you a disservice if I left this bit of information out. Although the idea of supplementing is a good idea, or at least in my opinion, there are limitations to supplements, even with the good ones. For example, we'll use vitamin C as an example. Vitamin C, as you know, is or has some antioxidant benefits. However, you should know that as soon as you open the bottle and the product is exposed to the air, many supplements begin to lose their detoxification abilities. And then as you put it in your mouth, the enzymes in your saliva further break it down. And of course, once it comes in contact with your stomach acids, it really loses much of its potential. That's why I don't necessarily just look at the label as you do your research. You want to focus on the end result. In other words, how much was the person's oxidative stress reduced in that actual individual. Was it reduced 10%, 20%? I mean, that's really what matters. A good measure of oxidative stress is the blood test called T-bars or the lipid peroxidase test. That's what I would look at, not necessarily what's on the bottle. For the most part, that's meaningless to me. So at this point in my research, I remember being very frustrated. If boosting glutathione and lowering oxidative stress was so important in my son's life, and gosh, even in myself, my wife, my other kids, and diet and regular supplements didn't seem to be adequate, gosh, what else was there? It seemed like I was stuck. And then it dawned on me, wait, glutathione is an enzyme that your own body produces, and it plays a major role in cellular detoxification, right? And there are ways to boost your own glutathione, right? Well, if that's the case, are there any other enzymes that our body produces that are like glutathione to reduce oxidative stress? Well, so back to PubMed I go, and lo and behold, there are over 18,000 studies on the subject, and they couldn't all be about glutathione. So have you ever heard the expression going down a rabbit hole? Yeah, that's what I did. But I jumped in with both feet, and as I went deeper, I came across a very interesting article from Washington State University. In that study, they were talking about a protein molecule called NRF2, and what caught my attention was that they called it a master regulator of detoxification, as well as being an antioxidant, an anti-inflammatory, and other cytoprotective mechanisms. In other words, it protected the cells from damage. It activates over 500 genes in humans. Then I read where one of the most incredible statements that I've ever read. In that study, they said that the discovery of NRF2 or our ability to activate NRF2 may well become the most extraordinary therapeutic and most extraordinary preventative breakthrough in the history of health. And I thought to myself, okay, what in the world is this NRF2 thing, and why haven't I heard about it sooner? So back to PubMed I go, and sure enough, NRF2 is a big deal. It's over 14,000 studies just on NRF2, and the studies seem to include every possible disease that you could think of, including ADHD and autism. This one particular study points to how increased NRF2 activation helps to block that NF-κB molecule as well as other inflammatory processes in persons on the autism spectrum. Now, that NF-κB molecule is a molecule that triggers the inflammatory process. It's actually involved in many inflammatory diseases. Again, for the sake of time, I won't go into each of the studies, but I certainly encourage you to look into it yourself. Look, these studies are fascinating. Now, for those of you who are science geeks like me, you have got to look at this molecule. After researching what this protein molecule does, I understand why Washington State University says that this molecule may well become the most extraordinary therapeutic and most extraordinary preventative breakthrough in the history of health. So for the sake of time, I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version, okay, the short version. NRF2 is what you call a basic leucine protein. It's a BZIP. It regulates hundreds of other antioxidant proteins that collectively work to protect against cellular damage that's triggered by oxidative stress. Okay, did you hear what that means? All right, it regulates hundreds of other antioxidants, proteins that lower oxidative stress. When NRF2 is activated, it literally turns on the production of hundreds of enzymes like superoxide dismutase, catalase, and of course, it even turns on glutathione. And together, those hundreds of enzymes create a cascading effect, what the body needs to fight reactive oxygen species or oxidative stress. Now, I'm a simple guy, and what I understand is that I don't have to worry about trying to turn on hundreds of enzymes. I just need to figure out a way to activate NRF2. And NRF2 will take care of turning on all of the other enzymes. Oh my goodness, did you see that? Okay, so if you're like me, you're wondering, how in the world do I activate NRF2? So we always go back to what foods boost NRF2. And as it turns out, there are foods that will positively affect NRF2. There's even NRF2 diets out there. But again, I understand. Some of our kids are those picky eaters. And even for the ones who are good eaters, how realistic is it to expect them to follow an NRF2 diet consistently? Yeah, I know it can be a little crazy. As a parent, I know how you feel. All right, I felt the exact same way. So I thought to myself, are there nutritional products out there that can help boost NRF2 significantly? So what do? Exactly. Back to PubMed I go. And are you getting the idea of how important this website can be for you? I mean, if you want to freak out your doctor, start talking to them about a research project or an article that you found in PubMed, right? They won't know what to do with themselves. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Okay, don't do that. Don't do that to them. So, in this particular study, they talk about how phytochemicals boost NRF2. Now, fortunately, all of those are generally available in most nutritional stores. The only problem that I see is trying to get your child to take multiple supplements. And of course, you have to be very careful with the dose, right? How much of one, how much of the other, and how they interact with each other, as well as how they interact with medication, right? So I looked to see if there was an NRF2 activating nutritional product out there that had already been formulated, all of the ingredients as well as the measurements, the dosages of those ingredients into one single product. And the answer is yes, there are out there. So as always, I want to encourage you, do your due diligence. Find the best NRF2 activator that works for you. Remember, you want a quality product, so preferably certified by the NSF or the Banned Substance Control Group, the BSCG. You want one that has independent peer-reviewed studies or articles in various medical journals on the product itself, not the ingredients. Remember, you want, that PubMed and peer-reviewed studies. That's the gold standard in research. Also, you want to make sure that it's a reputable company. Again, I would avoid Amazon. I have nothing against Amazon. I make purchases on Amazon on a regular basis, but I just wouldn't buy my nutritional products from there. Okay, you just never know what you're getting. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So I think at this point, we have pretty much exhausted glutathione and oxidative stress. Oh my goodness, we still have 3 more areas to cover. So I'm going to pick it up a little bit, and the next topic is going to be on mitochondrial dysfunction. Well, if you remember from junior high school biology, inside of every cell you have these little organelles called mitochondria. And mitochondria is typically been called the powerhouse of the cell, but we now know that it's so much more than that. In fact, the average person has 10 million billion mitochondria. It's 10% of your total body weight. In fact, it is the powerhouse of 97% of your energy. It's also involved in the cellular detoxification process, monitoring healthy cell life, elimination of unhealthy cells, as well as the creation of newer and healthier cells. Now, doesn't it make sense that if something has an important role in your body, that you should, one, know something about it, and secondly, do everything you can to protect it, not only in yourself, but also to address it in the bodies of our loved ones, especially those diagnosed on the autism spectrum. So you might be wondering, why is this of particular concern for persons with diagnosed on the autism spectrum? Well, if you go to PubMed.gov, again, our National Library of Medicine, the gold standard for research, there you will find that there's over 200 studies linking mitochondrial dysfunction and persons with autism. In fact, in Frontiers in Physiology, the headline reads, Evidence linking oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, and inflammation in the brain of individuals with autism. In this particular article, they said 80% of children with autism had signs of mitochondrial dysfunction. Folks, that's 80%. In this particular article, they compiled 18 different studies, and what they found was that on average, 78% of children with autism have mitochondrial dysfunction. In this article, they pointed to how the amount of mitochondrial dysfunction is directly related to the severity of autism. And it's not just simply autism, that's also a big part of persons with ADHD and other neuroatypicalities. So the question is there a way to activate your cell's ability to produce new and healthy mitochondria? Well, we know that there exists a protein called the nuclear respiratory factor 1, or NRF1 for short, which exists inside of your cells and when activated transcribes or rewrites genetic information. Amongst other key actions, the NRF1 pathway is heavily involved in the activation of key genetic expressions which regulates cellular growth, mitochondrial biogenesis, or replication. In fact, going back to PubMed, you'll find more than 300 peer-reviewed studies on the subject of NRF1 and the creation of new mitochondria. Now, with that in mind, is there a natural way to turn on that NRF1 pathway? Well, and as before, we start with a healthy diet, and there are foods that will boost NRF1 production. And yes, it goes without saying that there are many challenges and limitations that go along with maintaining a healthy diet. In terms of nutritional products, surprisingly, there are very few NRF1 activators compared to NRF2. So again, do your due diligence when looking at the right companies, because I believe these two working synergistically can go a long way towards cellular health. Please keep in mind that, as I mentioned at the beginning of the workshop, by no means are we implying that any of this information should be used as treatment for really any condition. This is information only, information that I've come across over the years, and nothing more, nothing less. I hope it's useful for you. I know this journey has been really eye-opening for me. All right, so let's move on. Throughout my research, I've come across something that was very interesting for me. There's a natural compound that, when added, seems to almost turbocharge the effects of NRF1 and NRF2 activation. That involves boosting sirtuin levels. Now, let me explain how sirtuins work and why they're important. In the most basic sense, as we live and work and do our thing every day, our cells are creating cellular debris, a kind of cellular sludge. Now imagine what your house would be like if your plumbing got clogged up and everything began to back up and overflow back into your house. Well, that's kind of what's happening inside of your cells, and sirtuins play a key role in regulating cellular health. However, sirtuins can only function in the presence of NAD, which is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. It's a coenzyme that's found in all living cells. So, in fact, this is such a big deal. There are over 9,000 studies on the subject of sirtuins in PubMed. And many of those studies characterize sirtuins as regulators of lifespan. So this is important not only for persons diagnosed with autism, but in everyone. And the reason being is that sirtuins, as with many biomarkers, tend to decrease as we get older. And it's a part of the aging process. So are there natural ways to boost sirtuins? Absolutely. Here's a few examples. And I realize that I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but do your due diligence when making any changes to your diet. All right? Some of you may be wondering, what about nutritional products? And the answer is yes, there are tons of NAD products. They usually say NAD, right? That's because sirtuins require that cofactor, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. My research finds that all of those products are certainly not the same. Some say they boost NAD, but when you look at them closer, they only boost it by 2%. It's not really very much. One particular NAD synergizer boosts sirtuins by 100% in 24 hours. Now, that was impressive. So make sure you follow all of the steps outlined within the NRF1 and NRF2 before choosing the right NAD synergizer. All right, let's move on to the next topic, which is brain inflammation and brain health. Now, as with all other issues we discussed here, the foundation is a good diet. As far as nutritional products, there's lots of research out there that shows promising results when it comes to brain health. I'll go over a few of these with you. Niacin, which is vitamin B3, there's over 13,000 studies, and several of those studies, actually there's 436 studies, point to its effects on brain function. Vitamin B6, over 16,000 studies on vitamin B6, and many of those have to do with how vitamin B6 improves your overall mood, helping to calm and maintain a healthy nervous system. What about vitamin B12? Over 21,000 studies. Some of the effects include a healthy nervous system. Also, look at this, making healthy DNA. Let's see here. What about magnesium? Over 100,000 studies just on the subject of magnesium. Now, how important is magnesium to your life? Well, it activates over 300 enzymes. Wow. It's also been crucial to nerve transmission and brain function. What about one of my favorites here is DMAE. Over 478 studies. DMAE boosts your overall brain power, improving memory, slowing down the aging process. It's also a precursor to the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which is the neurotransmitter that helps nerve cells communicate better. Let's see here. Over 165 studies when they use DMAE in the treatment of persons with ADHD. In addition to the, let's see here, 110 studies where they use DMAE as a treatment for persons with autism. Let's see here, quercetin, over 116,000 studies. Pine bark, over 285 studies, very powerful antioxidant. L-theanine, look at this, over 155 studies. It boosts the neurotransmitter GABA. Here's why that's important. Research shows that persons who suffer from seizures tend to have very low levels of GABA. Now, I'm certainly not implying that that this would be a cure for seizures. However, doesn't it make sense that if you can get sufficient amounts of L-theanine in your body and boost your GABA, it should have a positive impact on your brain. In addition to boosting GABA, it also boosts the serotonins and dopamine levels, which helps to regulate emotions, mood, concentration, alertness, sleep, and energy cycles. Look at this. L-theanine has also been clinically proven to enhance alpha brainwaves. So earlier in at the beginning of this workshop, I alluded to how at our clinic we do brain mapping studies and neurofeedback, and one of the main goals is to enhance and regulate alpha brainwaves. Well, what if you don't have access to a brain mapping or a neurofeedback clinic? How can you positively impact alpha brainwaves? Well, L-theanine. It's clinically proven to enhance those alpha brainwaves. Let's see here. What else? It's clinically proven to boost your dopamine levels, giving you a positive outlook on life. Now, for the sake of time, I won't go into some of the details of some of the other ones. Look at this. Rhodiola rosea, 783 studies, protects the brain from oxidative stress. CoQ10, over 4,000 studies, again, protecting the cells from oxidative damage. Turmeric, over 16,000 studies on turmeric and curcumin. We know that turmeric curcumin is one of the strongest anti-inflammatories known to man, and it does so by blocking the NF-κB molecule that tends to travel to the nuclei of the cells and turns on that inflammatory response. And that NF-κB molecule we know plays a major role in many chronic diseases, and turmeric or curcumin has the ability to block that molecule. In addition, it's also been known to boost your brain-derived neurotrophic factor, also known as BDF. BDF is a neurotransmitter modulator that affects your brain's ability and enhances neuroplasticity. It may even promote neurogenesis. Now, for the non-medical person watching this video, what neurogenesis means is the creation of newer and healthier neurons or brain cells. Now, please keep in mind that there are many other factors associated with the complex process of neurogenesis. This is not the end-all be-all here, okay? I hope that makes sense. So let's move on. Here is another one. Here's a great study. 60 people diagnosed with depression, randomized into 3 groups. One group took Prozac, the second group took 1 gram of curcumin, and the third group took both Prozac and curcumin. The results after 6 weeks was that the curcumin group had improvements similar to Prozac. Wow, without the side effects. So as you can see, there's a ton of scientific evidence to support how natural compounds can have a positive impact on your cellular health, brain health, and overall well-being. So, as I've done throughout this entire workshop, I encourage you to become proactive in finding what works best for you. Ideally, there would be a product that would take all or a majority of these compounds and put them into one product, right? I'm not a big fan of energy drinks because of the high amount of caffeine and sugar. Most of them have between 11 and 15 milligrams of caffeine per ounce, or even more. In my opinion, that's excessive. However, if there was a product that could take these compounds and still keep the caffeine levels at or below 9 milligrams per ounce, or even caffeine free, that would be an amazing product. Literally, liquid brain food. So I hope this serves as a good guide for some things that you might want to look for. So here's something else that might interest you: omega oils. There's a lot of research out there pointing to the benefits of omega oils, especially as it pertains to brain health. Now, I understand that many people complain about the fishy aftertaste, and still others complain what we affectionately call the burps. Now, part of the reason is that most of the time the oil they take is several months old, and it's rancid. Now, obviously, this is going to be an oversimplification, but I believe it's going to be very typical of the route taken by other omega oil companies. The fish is harvested and sent to a processing plant. Then it goes to a distribution warehouse. From there, it goes on the back of another truck. Now, keep in mind that the backs of these trucks are usually not air conditioned, so it goes to the primary state warehouse, whether it's California, New Mexico, Georgia, wherever. Then it goes on the back of another truck and eventually makes it to the store, where it's put on the back of a shelf so that the older merchandise can be sold first. The result is that many store-bought fish oils are 3 to 4 months old. Well, no wonder it tastes so bad. That would be like eating 3 to 4 month old sushi. Now, we found a company that significantly shortens that process. They also harvest the fish and send it to a processing plant. Then it goes to a distribution warehouse. However, here's where the process differs. Because they don't sell their product through a third-party store, you order it directly from them and it gets delivered directly to your home. And the result is a cleaner, fresher product. So make sure you're an informed consumer and know where your product is coming from. Does the harvested fish come from a farm, or is it wild caught? I believe wild caught is better, but if it's farmed, make sure the farm subscribes to the highest standards. As you can tell, I firmly believe having the right omega oils should be a part of your daily routine. And with that said, we'll move on. Now, at this point, we have covered 4 out of the 5 biomarkers associated with persons with autism. And I've provided what I believe to be some practical steps to promote better cellular health. But the last point we're going to talk about is related to poor digestive system, also referred to as the gut biome. And here's why that's so important. In many circles, the gut is referred to as the second brain. And the reason is that the microbes in your gut can produce signals that travel throughout the body and to your brain. This is known as the gut-brain axis or the gut-brain connection. For example, this slide represents the middle of your gut biome. The squiggly line represents the lining of your digestive system, also known as the epithelium. So as the microbes are digesting the food, they create metabolites. And these metabolites will cross into your bloodstream and travel throughout your body as signaling molecules. And I couldn't begin to explain how powerful signaling molecules can be. I will say this: signaling molecules have the potential to activate hundreds, if not thousands, of metabolic processes. But what is even more interesting than this indirect communication is the direct communication via the central nervous system. There are literally pathways that run from your gut all the way to your brain and back, affecting how brain function. We could literally speak on this subject for weeks. Suffice to say that an unhealthy gut has been linked to many health-related issues, such as low immune system. And as you know, having a low immune system makes you more susceptible to contracting viruses and other diseases. An unhealthy gut has also been known to compromise your body's ability to absorb and make certain vitamins, such as vitamin B and vitamin K, as well as the absorption of calcium and iron. An unhealthy gut also changes your metabolism. It may even lead to increased probability of obesity. It's also been linked to certain inflammatory processes. And of course, Dr. Krajmalnik-Brown's discovery linking the between autism and decreased gut bacteria diversity. So if you go back to PubMed.gov, there's over 200 studies on the effects of gut health in autism. This recent study confirms what we already know, that there's a significant correlation between poor gut health and persons with autism. Another article in the National Academy of Sciences points to the difference in brain development as well as brain function and its correlation with having a healthy gut. In that study, there is a clear difference in brain function related to a healthy gut biome. So, if having a healthy gut is so important, what are your options? Well, it's always a good idea to start with a healthy diet, which, foods that promote a healthy gut microbiome. But what we're talking about here is beyond eating clean. Dairy-free, gluten-free, GMO-free, carb-free, taste-free, fun-free, high-fat, low-fat, high-protein. It's just insane. No wonder we're all confused how we should eat. So, while I do believe we should avoid certain foods, that's only half the battle. Why not focus on fortifying your digestive system and making it so strong and healthy? If your child does happen to consume something with dairy or gluten or a yellow number whatever, it doesn't have the catastrophic consequences because their body can handle it. And that is why I'm a big advocate for gut health, and particularly prebiotics and probiotics. Now, we need to be very aware when taking probiotics. They're not all the same. For example, traditional probiotics capsules, they tend to disintegrate in the stomach within 7 minutes. Now, that's bad because stomach acids destroys a majority of the probiotics, rendering them worthless. You want to find one that has some sort of a time release. BioTrack is a good example. BioTrack technology is a coating that goes over the probiotic and protects the spheres from dissolving for approximately 50 some odd minutes. Now that's genius because it means that the capsule is dissolving in the lower intestines where you need it most. So there you have it, folks, the gut-brain connection. And with that, we come to the end of our workshop. I hope by now that you've been able to learn just some valuable strategies that can go a long way in optimizing cellular health. And I'd like to leave you with a few stories or testimonials of people that I know that have adopted what I call the biohacking lifestyle. They've become proactive in their family's well-being and made remarkable improvements in overall function. For example, this child is the nephew of a good friend of mine who is one of the top physicians in his field in the great state of Arizona. He's been in medical practice for over 19 years. He's also an educator in health and nutrition. And because of the results with his nephew and many of his clients with various diagnoses, including autism, he's become one of the biggest advocates on the biohacking protocols. In fact, he has spoken all over the country on this subject. Here's another example. This is one of our clients. When he came to us, he was 10 years old. Mom reports that prior to biohacking, his lipid peroxidase test, which is a blood test that measures levels of oxidative stress, his lipid peroxidase test came back consistent with a 46-year-old man. He had no initiation of language, minimal eye contact, and no initiation of interaction with other people outside of his immediate family. After approximately 4 weeks on a biohacking regimen, he spontaneously began to initiate and sustain complete conversations using descriptive language. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be a speech and language pathologist, but suffice to say that his scores on all his standardized tests have skyrocketed. And while he still requires various therapeutic intervention, he no longer requires occupational therapy in the school system. The speech and language pathologist is amazed at his progress. Of course, I jokingly commented how the biohacking regimen has made her look like a miracle worker. His oxidative stress levels are more age appropriate now. He has better eye contact, initiates interaction with others. He's even gone as far as letting everyone know that when he grows up, he wants to own his own business. a mobile taco truck. And his mom says, who knew he was an entrepreneur? Maybe all of this is just a coincidence. And if so, that's fine. But we're experiencing a lot of coincidences lately. Here's another example. This child has been in special education for 8 years. Now I want you to take a look at his grades and how they improved over the course of 4 months. After following a biohacking protocol for 16 weeks, this child tested out of special education. Do you understand what that means? Now, again, it may be a coincidence, but it appears that the biohacking protocol did more for him in 16 weeks than all of the other interventions over the last 8 years combined. Not only academically, but his speech patterns have improved dramatically, as has his motor coordination. He even began to take MMA at the same dojo I go to. He's competing in various tournaments, and he's even won a few medals. He decided to take up cello and learned so quickly that he was the second cello at his most recent school function. This kid's life is so radically different, and the results appear to be cumulative. In fact, his teachers were so impressed that several of them have become biohackers themselves. Now, again, maybe all of this is a coincidence. I mean, that's certainly within the realm of possibility, but I have dozens more of these quote-unquote coincidences, both children and adults with all types of different issues who appear to have experienced remarkable improvements. I hope by now I've been able to present just some of the reasons why I am so passionate about the concept of biohacking. I've worked in healthcare for over 30 years, and I've built one of the largest clinics of its kind in the country, and in all this time I've never seen anything like this before. And while I do have my preferred brands, which are based on my own years of product research, I want to say this: regardless of what product or brand you decide to go with, just do something. The power of NRF1, NRF2, sirtuin activation, along with all of the other topics discussed here, can be a powerful ally in your health as well as in the well-being of your loved one. So I'm just going to say this one more time. None of the information listed in this video is meant to imply that in any way that or that these suggestions are designed to treat, cure, or mitigate any specific conditions or disease. In addition, they are no substitute for good medical care. But I want you to remember this: you are your own biggest advocate. Moreover, you are your loved one's biggest advocate. And I simply believe that people should be more proactive in their health care than they are in their sick care. And I believe most reasonable people would understand and agree with that statement. So I will close with that. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you had a choice of what to do with your time, and I appreciate you spending it with me today. Blessings to you. And as I always like to say, remember, there is a better way to live.